today we're going to be making some pasta and meat sauce. Now the meat sauce is the primary thing that we're doing today because I'm going to show you how you can use it for a couple different things. But today we're just going to do the meat sauce. I'm going to put some aside and then put the rest on the pasta. So what you're going to need if you're doing the pasta is a bowl and a strainer. Now this one has a strainer that's also its lid, so that works out really well. You need a pan, you need a cutting board, a tablespoon for garlic later. If you're doing the pasta, you want a slotted spoon, and then you want a regular spoon and a sharp knife. And then we'll go ahead and talk about the ingredients. So if you want to have just a basic meat sauce, you got things to do, you need to make it quicker, or you don't want to cook that much, all you're going to need is the olive oil, ground meat of some sort. I'm going with bison today, but it can be chicken, turkey, beef, whatever. And your favorite pasta sauce. And that's really all you need to do. Just mix that together and you can put it over pasta and that'll be fine. But since we're going to be doing some other meals with this, I wanted to add some ingredients, make it a little heftier. So the spices you're going to want to do are any sort of an Italian blend, rosemary, garlic, salt, and pepper. I also like to use the Mrs. Dash garlic and herb. That's one of my go-tos. You're also going to want to add a can of Petite diced tomatoes. We're going to use some tomato paste. And for our veggies, we're going to use an onion, not the whole thing. We'll get to that in a bit. A couple of mushrooms. And then when it comes to the pasta, you can either do the dried pasta, or I'm going to be doing ravioli tonight. And there'll be cooking instructions on those, so we'll tackle that as it comes. We're going to start by getting the vegetables prepared. Editor TJ jumping in here really quick because I noticed that I had the red wine in the ingredients, but I didn't mention it. So I thought I would take this chance to explain why it's in so many of my recipes, and that just comes down to flavor. You can also use it to deglaze, but you can use any liquid for that, so water's fine. If you do want some extra flavor, but you can't use red wine for whatever reason, you can put in beef broth or stock and sometimes some Worcestershire. I would not recommend grape juice. I've tried it. It's too sweet, does not taste correct. I have heard that you can mix it with some white wine vinegar and that would be fine, but since I haven't tried that, I can't recommend it. Anyway, just wanted to let you know, and back to the show. All right, so we're going to start with the onion, and as you can see, this is a big onion, so we're not using the whole thing. We're going to use half at most, maybe a quarter. That'll depend on how much onion you want in it. And we're going to dice this. So what I like to do when I'm dealing with a big onion like this is I'm going to cut along this way to kind of have the bulb cut in half. And then after we do that, try not to chop your fingers off. Boy, this is a hard onion. And just rotate it around if you can't get the knife all the way through, or if you have a bigger knife, you could use that. That's a good way to do it too. So now you can see where the layers are that are kind of papery. So you're going to take this and just cut this part off. Then you're going to get in here under the paper part. And you're just going to start peeling it back. Some are easier than others. And if you can, you want to leave that bulb intact. It's going to help you when you're doing the dicing. So I'm going to clean this up and then we'll come back for the cutting technique. Like I said, this is a lot of onion, so we're not going to use all of it. Going to, not quite half, a little more than half. And then you can use that later. Go ahead and put it in the bag with the other half. And then you have onions to play with next time. So the reason you kept the bulb on is there's a trick that you can use. If you start and you cut to the bulb like this, you see how it holds together? It doesn't flop around. That's really going to help you when you're going to do the smaller pieces, because when you're dicing, you do want to have pretty small pieces. And you're going to angle it as you're cutting too, if you can see that I'm doing that. Just makes it more even than if you go straight down, because, circular and geometry and all that fun stuff. So then You're just making your way through. Like I said, when you have it on the bulb, it holds together better, so you get these nice small pieces. All right, so now that we're going to start cooking, you're going to put your heat up on both your pan and your pot. You want to get the water boiling on that. Some people like putting salt in, but I think I've mentioned before that my family's pretty salt sensitive, so we don't do that. Now, you're going to take this one down as soon as it gets pretty warm, and you can feel it right now already. We don't want to burn everything, so we're going to just move it down to about medium heat. And we're going to add the olive oil. Maybe about a tablespoon, half a tablespoon, somewhere in there. And then we're going to add the onions. And you can hear they're already starting to sizzle. So once they're in there, I'm going to stir them around, get them coated with that oil, and you're going to cook these stirring for about 3 minutes. And then we're going to put the garlic in and continue for another 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. And then we're going to start with the meat. So while that's going, I'm going to go ahead and chop up the mushrooms. Okay, now that we have the onions going and sauteing, we're going to work on these. Now, the last time I showed you how to do mushrooms, we went and did them thin slice like this. These we're going to want to chop up more since we're going to be putting them into the sauce, and we want the littler pieces in the sauce. Now do remember they do sweat down, so they don't need to be tiny at this point. But you start with the same thing. And then if you want the thick ones in there, that feel free. But with the sauce, I do find it better to have smaller pieces. And since they do cook down, they don't need to be super tiny. And these are big mushrooms too, so, you know, not too huge. Cut this a little bit too. What we're going to do is right when the meat is almost about halfway done, that's when we're going to throw these in. So I'm just going to finish these up and get back to the stove. Okay, so these have been sauteing for 3 minutes. You can see that they're starting to get translucent, not all the way there. We're not trying to fully caramelize these yet. If you wanted to do that, you would cook these at a much longer temperature and much lower. And they'll get browner than this part right here. But that tells me we're as close as we want to be for what we're going to do now, which is add the garlic. So you're going to want to take your heat and move it down from medium to medium low. And you're going to take a nice heaping tablespoon of garlic, about 3 to 4 cloves if you have the smaller cloves. If you have big cloves, just 2. If you want to dice those up, I like the convenience of the garlic, as a lot of people call it. And we're going to stir this around, and we're going to do this for 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. And then we're going to add our tomato paste and start cooking the meat. Okay, now we're going to add the tomato paste. You're going to want about a tablespoon. Now I'm doing this just so you can see as much, but you could put it straight in there. And you're just going to move that around. You kind of smash it. You want to mix it with your onions and your garlic. Now when you add more liquid, this will break up even more, but right now we're wanting to toast this for about 30 seconds or so. And that's just going to release some of the aromatics and make it more fragrant. More fragrant means more tasty, because remember, your sense of taste and your sense of smell go together. Okay, and the water has started boiling, so we're going to put the raviolis in. These say they only need 3 to 4 minutes to cook, so let's just start putting them in there. And you can dump them straight in if you want, but then you also have the chance of having some stuff spill back. So I like to put about half of them in. Sorry about that. And then you can dump the rest. But you see how you can get that kickback. So once they're in there, you're going to give it a stir with your slotted spoon. And you're going to go back to cooking the meat sauce. This is going to take a little bit to come back up to temperature. So just watch it, and when it does start to boil again, that's when you're going to set your timer for the 3 minutes or 4 minutes. Okay, now that this has been toasting, this is when you're going to put that red wine in that we talked about. Not too much. It helps with the flavor. You can also deglaze at this point. That's where you scrape all the bits off. And alcohol boils at a lower temperature than water, so by the time you're done, all the alcohol from the wine will cook off and it'll just leave that red wine flavor. So since this is going for the meat, what I like to do is I like to go ahead and make an area for the meat. So these things are all pushed off to the side, so you don't have to worry as much of them burning. And you move the temperature up to medium heat again. And in with the meat. And a kitchen health thing, whenever you're dealing with ground beef or any ground meat, especially bird and fish, you do want to wash your hands if you've touched it raw, because you don't want any of the little buggies. So go ahead and do that after you're done. And when you're using the spoons, like we are today, since they're wooden, you want to make sure that you wash them immediately, because the wood is porous, so you don't want to take the chance of any bacteria or anything like that getting in. And every now and then you can also just put a pot of boiling water on the stove and put them in that for a couple minutes, and that'll sanitize them. So now that we've got this spread out, I'm going to go ahead and take my own advice and wash my hands. So if you wanted to make a simple meat sauce, this is kind of where you would start it. You didn't need to do the onions and the garlic and all that. I mean, it tastes wonderful. It's great to add them. But if you wanted to do simple, all you would do is just start with the meat, put your olive oil in, then the meat, and then like we're just doing here, just keep turning it, kind of mashing it up. You don't want huge chunks. If you wanted a chunky sauce, you could go ahead and take some sausages and slice up the sausages instead of the ground meat. That also tastes great. So you can see it's still rather pink. And we're going to let this cook for about 2.5, 3 minutes. And then we're going to add the mushrooms, and we're going to cook for another minute. And then we are going to finish up the sauce with the spices and the pasta sauce itself and the tomatoes. So ravioli has been boiling for 4 minutes, and you'll know it done because they tend to come floating to the top. And like I said, just keep an eye on them, give them a stir every now and then. Then you're going ahead and drain them. And if you're using a colander, put them back into the pot. And you're just going to let that sit while we finish up the sauce so that the residual heat stays with them. Okay, now that we're more brown but not completely cooked, we're going to add in the mushrooms. Like I said earlier, they do cook down. So if you think, oh, those chunks are too big, they will get much smaller. But if you want to go even smaller, you can do that, not a problem. Everything is up to you at this point. It's your show. All I want to do is teach you the tools of how to make this stuff. So, I'm going to start flipping. Break up the meat a little bit more. Put the pink parts down. Get the mushrooms all nice and incorporated. I'm going to get some of the stuff off the sides so that we're all nice and mixed up. And just watch this. All you're going to do from this point on is just stir it. Check the pinkness of the meat. That is too pink. And then when every piece of the meat is nice and brown, that's when we'll finish this up and we'll plate and have ourselves some dinner. Okay, now that we've cooked this for another couple minutes, you can see the mushrooms have gotten a lot smaller and all the meat is nice and brown now. So we're going to go ahead and throw the final ingredients in, and then it is dinner time. So what you want to do is you're going to start with whatever pasta sauce and give it a shake. Shake, rattle, and roll that bad boy. I'm going to pour that in. And not all of it's going to come out, so when we're done, I'm going to put some water in here, splish it around just to get the rest of that out. Next to go in is the Petite diced. You don't want to drain them, just put them straight in there. We're going to stir this at this point. So you can see that this is definitely making a lot of sauce, which is exactly what we want for this video. You can cut this in half, or you can freeze it. Or like I said, we're going to be using it for a couple things in upcoming videos. So once you have that all nice and moved around, that's when we're going to add the spices. So we're going to go in first with the rosemary. Now, if you have crushed rosemary, that's great. If you don't, and you just have regular dried rosemary, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take it, you're going to want to just kind of grind it up. Not only does it help release some of the flavors, it makes them smaller, so it moves around more. Okay, put that in. At this point, since we're already bubbling, we're going to move this down to a low heat. So 1 or 2 there. And it will bubble, and it's going to hit the back of your stovetop, and it's going to be dirty, and I'm sorry about that. Now, however much or as little as you want of any of these spices. If you want it heavily spiced, do that. I really love this one. So I'm going in there. Next, we're going to sprinkle in some black pepper. Now this again, however much or as little as you want. I don't want too much, just a couple shakes. And I don't usually put salt in anything and just salt it to taste later, but if you want to put some salt in, you can sprinkle a little now. And then finally, we're going to go in with some of our Italian seasoning. Okay, now you're going to stir it around again. And you're just going to let that sit for 2 to 3 minutes. Just let some of those spices get a little bit more hydrated. Let the flavors meld. Some of the liquid will come off. Now, if you want this a thicker sauce, you can do a couple things. Some people like to put the water from the pasta that they boiled in. And I guess that's because it has the starch from the pasta, and the starch will help thicken it up. The other thing you can do is just let it sit for longer, maybe 10 minutes or so, and a lot of the liquid will cook off that way. But since we want the liquid, we're not going to be doing that today. All right, so we're just going to let this sit, and then we're going to plate. So you're just going to take some of the raviolis and you're going to put it on the plate, and you're just going to scoop out as much as you want or as little as you want. Coat everything nicely. And just a teeny tiny bit more of the meat. Let's just do that. There you go. Then you're done, or you can have the option of some Parmesan cheese sprinkle. And there we go. Happy cooking, and I hope you enjoy.